Welcome to another episode of the Founder to Founder podcast. My name is Aaron Spivak, born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, here in Miami, and I've built multiple 7, 8, and 9-figure brands and recently just had the third largest D2C transaction in Canadian history. But today is not about me, because today you get to listen to another incredible story of the founder behind the founder, and we get to dive deep into what it takes to build something incredible. It's not always the tips and tricks, it's how you go about your life. So join us for another incredible podcast at the Founder to Founder. This episode is brought to you by the Founders Club, the premier community for founders pursuing excellence in the mind, body, and of course, business. The club is home to over 750 founders who are actively building stronger companies and better lives together. Through curated masterminds, destination retreats, and private events, members gain access to world-class insights, connections, and experiences designed to help them perform at the highest level. So the average founder in the club is doing between $5 and $50 million a year in revenue. So if you're ready to surround yourself with like-minded entrepreneurs who push you to grow and excel in every area of life, visit foundersclubofficial.com and apply to become a member today. Today we've got a very special guest, Hector, the Miami legend, an FC member, but most importantly, a good friend. And I think today's episode for a lot of people listening is going to be great because we're going to get to hear your story. But most importantly, I think any founder that's listening is going to gain perspective that either A, they don't have, or like myself, did have perspective on the impacts of health and entrepreneurship, but didn't really know where to start.
Yeah.
So Hector, welcome to the pod. Please, let's pull back the onion a little bit.
Let's go.
We'll get into the entrepreneurship, but I always love to first dig into where did entrepreneurship kind of start for you?
Man, it started really early, really early on. So I think it came from my father. So I was born in Honduras. My father's from Honduras. And his story, it's a very unique story. Grew up single parent household, the oldest of 7 siblings, right? So
Wow.
He had to figure out how he was going to make money from years, since he was 6 years old, right?
Wow.
So really tough story. I remember when my aunt told me the stories of my father, I broke down in tears, right? But he was always he's just a hustler, right? So when he moved to Miami, he had sold his business in Honduras for us to move over here. He always had this vision of me living in the United States and doing something with my life, even though he was doing well for himself over there, right? So he pretty much started from scratch over here. So
how old were you when your dad sold it and said, we're going to America, we're going to Miami?
I was about 2 years old,
Okay.
right? I didn't move until a year later. So he first
came
moved
here first. Okay, let me do 1 year trial.
Yeah.
And then he brought you over.
Yeah, 100%. That's how it happened.
With your siblings?
No. So I was just by myself.
Just you.
Just
Okay.
me. So
That's
my
beautiful.
my younger brother was born here, right?
Got it.
So, and then, moving here, my dad went from being an engineer, and he had a tortilla company in Honduras. So now he's had to study a trade, and he did an electrician, right? He wasn't going to go back to school to study engineering again.
Yeah.
So we did that. And then as I'm growing up, right, in elementary school, computers are out, right? It's 1995, 96, 97. And now he's kind of venturing off on his own. And I'm 8 years old, 9 years old, and he's having me do proposals and estimates on Microsoft Excel. Dude, I'm 8 years old. And it was super cool.
Hector, come on, man. We got to get to work.
Right, yeah. And it was that was more important than homework, right? Because that was the livelihood, right? This is the family's livelihood. So, I remember the computer was in his room. Right, it was a compact computer. If you guys remember, compact.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I had one of those in my house.
So it was there, and I had learned how to use Microsoft Excel and Word, in elementary school. So I'm 8, 9 years old. I remember he would give me a legal pad and be like, "This is everything that needs to be on a proposal," and he'd do it in Spanish,
Yeah.
and he'd write it out, and he'd give me kind of layout, and then I had to figure out how I was gonna do that layout on the computer. So from a really young age, I had to really start doing these things. So and I saw my dad, and for me, he was my hero, right? And I remember kids would be like, "Oh, my dad does this, my dad does that," and I used to be like, "Oh, my dad does this," and I help my dad do this, and and we, very humble beginnings, right? My dad was just trying to figure out new country, new everything. So it's not like we were like super loaded or anything like that. But he did well enough to sustain the family, right? He was the only breadwinner. But I knew I had to help him, right? Like, the language was a barrier, a couple different things. So that was like my first entry into
Wow.
entrepreneurship. And then when I was 10, I started a candy business. Like many of
Wow.
us probably started a candy
Yeah.
business, right?
Okay.
But I saw the economies of scale and I knew that there had to be volume in it, right?
Mm.
So I almost looked like I was running like a little cartel shop.
Yeah.
So
Like
I got
multiple backpacks full.
so the way I did it was I asked my mom for $20.
Okay.
And she's like, "Why do you need $20?" Like, "I'll pay you back."
Mm.
She gives me $20. I go, "Oh, but I also need you to drive me." So we went to Costco,
Oh, that's awesome.
and my goal was I want to get the premium candy because in school all the fundraisers were like shitty candy.
Yeah, lollipops, things nobody
Yeah,
wanted.
so I got the prime branded candy.
Like, what was the top seller?
Dude?
Like Airheads or
No, so we had Airheads. We had the lollipops with the gum in the middle. I forgot the
those were
brands.
huge.
Those, right?
Yes.
Pixie sticks,
Oof.
Reese's cups, little Snickers, and that was expensive, right?
Yeah.
My belief was like, because I'm giving premium candy, there's a cost to it. So I would sell one pixie stick for $1.
Wow.
When you would get it like at the gas station for like a quarter, maybe.
That's
right?
unreal.
So I tried it out for a week. I made the money back. I gave my mom $20, and I had $20. So I said, "Mom, take me." So she had to drive me. I buy more candy. And then what I did is I told one of my friends, I was like, "Hey, why don't you help me sell candy?" Eventually, long story short, I had 8 kids working for me.
That's it. Operation.
And every day, every night before going to bed, I would set up a gallon Ziploc bag with $20 worth of candy. And because everything was $1, so 20 pieces of candy. And what we would do is in the morning, they would give me the cash that they collected the day before, right? And then I would split it. So if they collected $20, I'll give them 10 and I'll keep 10.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood that if I had 8 people working for me, I was making $80 a day.
As a 10-year-old.
As a 10-year-old.
By the way, I love this because like I feel like I would have been your best friend. Tell me the conversation at home now, because, and I'll tell you the reason I asked, because I remember not at 10, but I think at like 13 when I was sealing driveways in my neighborhood. I would knock and I would paint, and oh my God, the amount of driveways I ruined. But I would charge like $100 and it would cost me 50. I'd make $50 and I would come home and I'd have $200. Like my dad's look on his face was like, "Who'd you steal that from? Like, how'd you get that?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, I sealed the driveway." It's like, "Whose driveway did you seal?" Like, tell me the conversation at home when you're coming back and you're like, "Listen, guys, we had a great day. All 8 guys sold out. I got $80."
I never really had that conversation. I think with my parents, especially my dad. My dad was so focused on building his business and doing all this stuff. Like, most of the conversations that I had was like really based around like, my, school, how was school, like, my grades, and then, whatever I can do to help out around the house. Like, I never really had that conversation, and I never really was. I've always been a really quiet kid. I don't like people knowing what I do, how I do it, when I do it. So I just kept the cash in my book bag, right?
You're just stacking.
I just stacked the cash. I was just stacking cash. Now,
But your mom was like a part of this, right?
yeah,
like,
my mom just thought I was like, it was like for fun. My mom didn't
he's
realize.
making friends. He's giving out candy at school.
Yeah, she didn't think, like, she knew like I wasn't losing money, but she thought it was like, oh, let him, like, As a matter of fact, it's a good question to ask because like I always tell the story, but I never asked my mom what she thought. But my dad was kind of like, he wasn't really thinking too much of it. But I broke a rule. So my rule was I was only gonna hire friends. So, and I was like, growing up, I was like somewhere between like the friendliest person in class and being like a little like nerd. I was like Pokemon. I was a science nerd. I almost skipped 2nd and 3rd grade because of my testing. So I was a big like nerd and a geek, right? Don't let the braids and the tattoos fool you, right? So I had it was imagine like all the nerdy kids just selling premium candy.
Wow.
That's what it was, right? It was like attacking the nerd selling candy. And
That's amazing.
there's one kid though, he saw that like everybody was making money. So all my friends were making about $50 a week, right?
It's a lot of money for a 10-year-old.
And they didn't have to go buy the candy. They didn't have to do anything. There was a kid, I still remember his name. His name is Dustin, right? So Dustin was like a jockey kid, right? He like wrestled, he played baseball. And yeah, I also knew he came from a like broken family. He lived with his grandma. And like one day he's like, man, like I need like money for I think baseball or something. He's like, Hector, can you help me? Can I sell candy? But he was also a little bit of a dick, right? He was a little bit of a jerk, right?
Yeah.
And but just like the goodness in my heart, I was like, you know what? Like I'm not gonna give you money, but I'll give you the opportunity to make money. So we started doing that. That lasted about 2 weeks. I think it was like a Friday, the second week. So I get there and everybody's giving me their share of their money, like so, and we're counting money, right? But I was in the back of the class, and we have like hundreds of dollars that I'm counting, and like candy, I'm giving bags. It's like, you know, and then Dustin's like, Hector, I don't think it's fair. You're taking half of all of our money. And then all my friends, the 8 kids, they were like, Dustin, shut up. He's the one buying the candy. He's doing all the stuff. He's like, you just made $50. And Dustin's like, no, I should be making 100. So he starts getting riled up, and I'm just looking at him, and I'm like, I'm not saying anything. And all my friends are like, Dustin, shut up, Dustin, shut up. So I go, Dustin, give me the money. And then I said, you know what? As a matter of fact, keep the 100. You're not gonna sell candy no more. So I cut him off. Right?
Yeah.
So he got really upset. So then I had a Ziploc bag with all the money. Those hundreds of dollars in the Ziploc bag, in quarters and dollars.
Yeah.
And he takes the bag, and we start like playing tug of war. Now there's like 8 little nerdy kids on top of this jog, right? And I'm just there like looking at him, and then the bag breaks, money goes everywhere, right? And our advisement teacher, she's like, what's going on in the back? So I get in trouble because now they found out why their fundraisers weren't working. So that was the end of the candy business for me.
Wow.
Right. And then after that, entrepreneur, like by the time I got to like 12, 13 years of age, on the weekends, I would go work with my dad. And I loved working with my dad because it was guaranteed whether I worked 2 hours or I worked 5 hours with him, I got $100. So I was just like, I knew each day I worked with him was $100. So like, I wake up, I was like, working on Sunday? Yeah. And then, but I think one thing I didn't learn from all that was how to manage money. You know, I think coming from like in an environment where there's a lot of scarcity and things that like you don't know what to do with this money, right? Like I'd save all this money and then I'd be like, you know, I'm 12 years old, 13 years old, walking around with like $4K cash in my pocket, right, from all the money I saved. I didn't know what to do. So like I didn't know what to do with the money, so then I would start spending it, right? And that's something that I you know, it followed me around for a little bit, right? I'm not really understanding the value of money because also like I felt like I can just make it easily, right?
That's so interesting because, you know, my parents are immigrants as well and very much resonate with the idea of I would say like a very valid scarcity mindset. It's like we don't have much. Everything we make, we know it's here today, gone tomorrow. And the money that we earn is 100% reliant on the labor that we put out.
Yeah.
So when you have $100, you look at that, you don't see $100. You see a day's work. And when someone's like, let's go buy $100 steak, you're like, wow, steak for a full day's work. And that's like that loop of scarcity mindset. But what you're describing is the opposite effect. It's, I didn't learn how to use money, so I just spent it in stupid ways. Or in hindsight, stupid ways. What would you say is, like, was there a time where you learned like a really hard lesson when it came to how you were spending money?
Dude, I think maybe just like 3-4 years ago, really, like really, you know, really recent, to be honest with you. I you know, Infinity started, you know, man, we were some of my previous friends, they call it like the heydays of Infinity, right? Because now like I'm coming out of the ashes of Phoenix Rising, right? But like you know, during those days, like it was like, dude, I go to the club and spend 10-15 grand.
Wow.
You know, blink of an eye.
What's up, founder to founder fam? I just want to quickly pause here and thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this journey. Starting a podcast is no joke. And the fact that hundreds of you listen every single week means the world to us. We want to continue to bring better and different and unique conversations to to you to give you the most amount of value. Our only ask is that if you enjoy the pod, to please just share it with a friend, and most importantly, leave a comment, DM us, give us any sort of feedback. This entire production is for you, so if we can make it just 1% better, we will. We love you all. All right, let's get back into the pod.
And for me, it was like I said, it was like, oh, I know I have a premium product. I know I have all these things. Selling came easy to me because I just had to sell. I had to like hustle my whole life, right? So for me, I didn't value that, you know, like, so I think for me, it was like, yeah, I can go ahead and spend the 15K. I know I'll make 100K like in the next 3 days. Like it wasn't like,
You feel like you were spending tomorrow's money today?
I think a little bit, right? Definitely. And I think that comes from just also like how I grew up and what I saw, right?
What did you
Because
see?
because like once like my dad's business started like really like rolling and doing things, right? Bro, I was like 13 years old walking around with, like 15K around my neck. You know?
Okay, there we go.
You get what I'm saying? So like
Yes.
my dad was really into like nice stuff because also he comes from like, I mean, his first job was 6 years old carrying concrete buckets. So that now being able to like,
I finally made it.
you know, feel like he made it. And I think too, I think the difference with, you know, and I had this conversation with my younger brother is, you know, I think if my dad had the people that I had around me, not that my dad's not successful now, like he does well for himself, the business is there, you know, he's stable, you know.
Do you think you could have been like, now knowing what you know now, you think you could have been smarter, better with the way he
Dude,
managed his money?
dude, it's not even like, it's like not just the way he managed money, right? But just like the business side of it, right? The investment side of it, right? Like all these different factors that, you know, now I've been blessed and given the opportunity to have amazing people around me, right? That have exposed me to so many different things that have taught me. My dad was a solo wolf, you know? So like my dad had me, but I'm like, I'm learning,
Yeah.
you know?
You're still in the come up.
Yeah, I'm still in the come up. And even like I was my dad's right hand until I was like about 20, right? So like I was the one like going to like pre-bid meetings because my dad's an electrical contractor. So like I was going to pre-bid meetings. I love the business side. For me, business was sport, right?
Yes.
So like, you know, I feel like if my dad had the opportunities that I had, or not even the opportunities, but the right people around him, right? It'd be different, right? Because the people that now looking back, the people that were around my father, like I don't think they were, I would consider like the best mentors, right? In essence, they were either like they were really like colleagues of my father, and they were like, you know, entertained by, you know, my dad's ability to generate business, right? So like think about this, like my dad, like when I was 13, my dad was my age now, 35, right? He had me when he was young. So when I was 13, my dad was, you know, uh living life, right? He was going to like concerts. He was going, you know, he was the one popping the bottles. He was doing all these things, right? But he was doing that for everybody around him. So like it was like the entourage around him, the entourage around my mom, my mom's friends, their husbands, whatever. And my dad was like footing the bill, right? So my dad was the one really like providing for all that. So I think if you had the right people around him, you know, I think my dad, you know, I think probably my life would have also been a lot different because the reason I'm on track with Infinity now is because of the fallout of my dad's business.
Absolutely.
Right. Because I realized that that wasn't my passion. That wasn't what I really wanted to do. That wasn't my purpose. So I switched majors because I first started studying engineering in order to follow the family business and do all these things. Right. So now like, and that I can go super deep into like kind of like the guilt that I have not being my dad's right hand still. Right.
Do you feel like his business would be better now if you didn't decide to change the path for yourself?
You know, I had a conversation with him about this because this is a very touchy topic for my father and I, right? Um, yeah, 1000%.
Is there a part of you that feels like, although you are successful, and we'll get into all the stuff you're doing now, is there a part of you now that feels like you let him down by changing your path?
Yeah, yeah. And you can, there is definitely like uh controversy in that, right?
Mm.
And we didn't talk about that until a couple months ago, you know? Like it was the first time, you know, and the what got us there is one of our clients owns a amazing construction tech company. They're also developers, right? And they had all the subs under them, but they wanted to get rid of one of the subs, so they wanted my dad to take over. So we go see the, you know. So I kind of set this whole thing up. It was really exciting for me. I felt like I was like back in the groove with my pops. We go travel to St. Petersburg or Fort Myers, and I'm in the car with him. You know, it's like 4 hours to 4 hours back,
Mm.
and, and we're having lunch, right, with the team. And my dad's like, you know, he talked about the day that I called them to tell him that I was going to drop out of the engineering program.
Wow.
And that was the first time he ever said it. So they mentioned it, whatever. And then our client, who's a great friend of mine, who owns the company's called Ernest, little shout out to them. He's like, oh yeah, Hector told me that story, but my dad told it from his perspective. And then we get in the car, and now we have 4 hour drives back. And then he looks at me, and he's like, man, that's the first time I ever tell that story to anybody. And he goes, if you wouldn't have changed, everything would have been so different.
Wow.
And I can hear like the, not the disappointment, right? Because it wasn't disappointment, but I can feel the sorrow in it
Mm.
for him, right? And for me, like that was like really hard for me to take that and absorb that. I felt like that was like a straight punch to the face. But it
Mhm.
wasn't intent. It wasn't like malintent,
It
right?
was just his truth.
It was his truth, like you
Yeah.
said, right? And then he's like, and I go, and he's like, you know, I remember that day, everything, you changed everything. The whole track changed everything.
Wow.
And but then, you know, the narrative was like before, because not to get too deep into it right now, but
You can go as deep as you want.
well, I think that the biggest controversy I've had in my entire career path, right? And I think the initial fuel for my fire, uh, for Infinity was like to prove my father wrong, because I felt like the only opposition I had was my father,
Mm.
right? I love him to death. I'll do anything for this man, right? But the only man that's told me like to stop. I remember I missed out on a couple properties to open up like our first headquarters in 2014. And in 2015, I'm in Wynwood, and and he calls me. He's like, "Hey, where you at?" I'm like, "I'm in Wynwood. I'm gonna go look at a property." He goes, "Just stop doing that." You know, so like he's the only person. Like I yet have to sit in front of a family office, right, or investors, and they tell me, he's like, "Oh, you're crazy," right?
Mm.
That was my father, right? So when he tells me that, he's like, you know, I'm like, ugh, like I don't know how to feel, right? In the car, and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, shoot, I have 4 hours left on this car ride. But then he looks at me and he's like, but I failed you.
Mm.
That's why you switched. And then that was, you know, and then yeah, and this is there's
What did
only
he mean by that? What do you think he meant by that?
so the catalyst to me changing like my career trajectory and like what I was studying and everything was the recession, right?
His business going backwards created distrust in the future for you. So you're like, I got to take care of myself.
Yes, but also like I realized when I looked at it, I was like, okay, I've seen us have amazing times and I've seen us have bad times, but now I'm seeing us have really, really gut wrenching times, right? I felt like I was living in like a third world country, right?
Wow.
Right. I went from like in high school, like I said, having 15K around my neck, right? To like, what am I going to eat tomorrow?
Wow.
Right. So, and I was like, I know I'm going to have to go through really difficult moments in my career and in my life. Am I willing to go through those moments doing this? Because I knew those moments are going to come
Mm.
regardless, right? I think all of us have stories of perseverance and grit,
Yeah.
right? But what path or what storm am I willing to take on, right? So for me, I was like, this is not it. I've always wanted to work with athletes. I've always wanted to be involved in sports, but also I wanted to make money. And when I was in high school, I started looking at like, oh, like in my leadership journal, my freshman year, I wrote, I want to work with extreme sport athletes, NFL athletes, and the most powerful people in the world, right? And I want to make him healthy. But then when I didn't know how to do that, right? So then I started like Googling stuff or Yahoo, it was really Yahoo. And I found out that, there's this thing called a personal trainer. But then I looked at the annual salary, it was like 15,000. I was like, dude, I'm wearing 15K around my neck. Like
That was one night at the club.
I'm like, there's no way.
Right.
There's no way I'm gonna do that. So I was like, I'm just gonna go to engineering. But then when I saw people in my father's six figures, we lost the house, we had to move out, the cars, the whole thing, everything was, and it's not like we lived a super lavish life, but we were very comfortable. Right. So like to go from comfortable to, toasting bread and putting Parmesan cheese on it to feed my younger brother when my dad was out there looking for how we're gonna eat. Like that was gut wrenching. So I was like, if I'm gonna go through that, I'm gonna do what I want. Right. And then that's when I switched. And I remember I called him and I was, hey, I'm dropping out of the program.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was like so that's where he says for him, he feels that the reason I switched is because he failed me. Right. And that was like, that was a very interesting take on him because I've never heard that perspective. Because before, for me, like my father was like, the biggest resistance to what I was doing. When I built our first like big headquarters, in Edgewater, I remember I was like he was there and, he was kind of like emotionally not there. And I had two big parties, I had like one of our client artists, he's like performed in the facility, like the whole thing. And my dad was just like there in the corner. So I got like really upset and I'm like, man, this is the only dude that like resists me, like resists everything I'm doing. I said, I'm gonna be so good that he's gonna have to say he's proud of me.
Wow.
Right? So, and I remember at that time I told all my friends, it was like 4 a.m, right? We stayed there until 4 a.m. And I was like starting tomorrow, he's gonna be forced to say he's proud of me. But then now, like, fast forward a couple years, fast forward 7 years, he's having this conversation with me. I failed you. And it's like, it's a very interesting perspective, And then, because the thing is, growing up, I was like the golden child. I was like, all his friends, everybody in the construction trade were like, oh, this guy's going to take your company, like the legacy, like Hector's a legacy.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of pressure. I always felt that kind of pressure. So for many years, I felt like, it didn't matter what I did with Infinity. Dude, I've flown private all over the world with some of the most powerful, impactful people in the world. And I don't think I could ever, and the way I felt was like, I don't think I could ever like jump over that hurdle of like letting my father down. That's what I felt. I felt like he was a resistance, right? It didn't matter. It didn't matter what I was doing, who I was with, where in the world I was, right? Who was in Infinity, right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter. But then like hearing that perspective from him, like it really changed a lot of things for me.
Was he, or were you able to finally hear from him how proud he was or is of you?
It was it actually happened this year. It happened this year, Father's Day.
Wow.
So I was going through, the past 2 years have been very difficult for me, right? Lost 7 figures. I don't know how, I know how I made it out. I know how I'm here, and that's through my faith, through God. I believe in God, right? So I know God made it out because how I maintain my lifestyle with my 3 kids, the wife, all these things, like does not make any sense, right?
Why not?
Because financially it doesn't. Like my overhead is insane, like it just doesn't, given the fact that we're only making like, we've lost like 90% of our revenue month over month, right?
Why?
So we were in a big litigation case. We lost our facility. It was like, it was like Murphy's Law. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Yeah.
And no matter how much I tried, I felt like nothing worked, right? So anyways, like, and it's interesting because like when I was at the highest high, I didn't get that. I'm proud of you. It was when I was, coming out of it, right? So I didn't talk to my parents for like 6 months. I was going through my own stuff, right? Trying to figure things out, trying to figure out Infinity. I'm in the middle of the cap race. So I'm like trying to flow. I'm like treading water this whole time. And I'm like, I can't handle that negative resistance. I need to like remove myself from it because I don't want him to be like, just quit or just do this. I don't want to hear that.
Because you know the message on the other side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then finally, through one of our leading investors, who's a big brother to me, a mentor, he's brought me closer to God. His name's Mo. Mo kept like, you need to talk to your father, right? You need to talk to your father. Because in I'm Muslim, and in Islam, right, it's, it's God and it's your parents.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's the unlock.
Yeah.
It's like it was right there.
Yeah. And I'm like, and he's like, you need to talk to your parents. And then I realized that like I had all this trauma, and I don't like calling it trauma. I just realized I had this unresolved issues with my father, right?
The stories.
Yeah.
The real stories.
And Mother's Day was coming around. And I'm like, damn, like I was like dreading Mother's Day because I'm like, I'm gonna have to see them. So I said, you know what? I'm just gonna go. So I did, I prayed about it. I saw him. Didn't really engage with my dad too much.
What were your fears going into Mother's Day? Like, you love your mother. It's Mother's Day. You want to be there. But there's something inside of you saying, fuck. Like,
it was really like going there and then like having to confront what I perceived the negative resistance from my dad, right?
The story, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, damn, I gotta go. So like, and then because I show up, they're at the beach, right? I go with the kids, I'm gonna go. It's my mom, like I love my mom to death, right? Like she was like, I was just talking to her before I got here. And I was like, so I show up. My father and I, we barely talk, we say hi, kind of stuff like that. And it kind of worked out good because usually the kids are very shy around my dad, but they were like all over him. So like, I'm like, perfect. It worked out.
They warmed him up for you.
Yeah. And then we didn't really talk, but then afterwards, he gave me a hug and then we shall talk later. So the following week, I'm with Mo and like it's a Islamic holiday. So like we're just hanging out on the beach. So both our families are together. And then my phone, I'm never gonna forget everybody's look. My phone starts vibrating and everybody looks and says dad. And everybody's like, oh, like
Wow.
Everybody's like, oh. And I'm like, I pick up and I'm like, what's up, dad? And he goes, hey, I just want to see if you can come tomorrow for your mom's birthday. I'm like, dad, it's mom's birthday for sure. Like I was planning on coming either way. He's like, cool. Like, can you pick up a cake? I was like, yeah, for sure. He's like, okay, I'm excited to see you. Boom. I was like, oh, that was like cool,
Interesting.
And then what is it? I go the next day. It was awesome. It was like, it felt like back in the days, right? All the kids were there, right? My dad cooked fish. It felt like it was just like, because we used to do these like cookouts and grill outs every Sunday, right? To get together with the family. So this was a Saturday. We got there. It was amazing, right? Now fast forward a couple weeks and now it's Father's Day. So Father's Day, we go to his house. And typically and I'll say I've been very selfish for Father's Day. Since I've had a kid 5 years ago, right? I've been like, dog, it's like,
it's my day.
It's my day, But I say, we're going to my parents' house. My dad didn't want to like go to dinners and go to busy places. He wanted to stay home. So we go there, we spend time with him, we're talking, chopping it up, doing everything. And it was good. It was really good, it was really good. And that night when I get home, he sends me a long text message. He goes, hey, before the night is over, I just want to let you know, I'm proud of you as a man. I'm proud of you as a father. I'm proud of what you're doing. All this other things. Dude, I like fell on my knees.
Wow.
And just started like crying. And I started praying. I was like, alhamdulillah, like God, thank you so much for this. And then that's when we started. So at that moment in time, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to surprise him with a trip. So we did a surprise trip to Costa Rica. I took the whole family to Costa Rica. It was in July, so a couple weeks later. He didn't know, right? It was amazing. I told my mom to tell him they were going to Jacksonville. So I ordered a driver. They picked up my parents. My dad fell asleep on the airport. He thought he was coming to my place.
Yeah.
And he wakes up at the airport. He's like, what are we doing in the airport? And then my mom's like, no. Hector wanted to take an airplane to Jacksonville, so it's quicker. My dad's like, that's weird. But then my mom hands me his passport and he's like, why do you have the passport? I got everything. I had like a concierge waiting at the curbside, boom, boom, do everything. And when we get in the airport, we're like, hey, I have a surprise for you. I was like, oh, one of my friends is coming, who's actually my CEO, Dragon, and he loves Dragon. So I'm like, he's like, oh, Dragon's coming? He's like, yeah. And he's like, oh my God, he's all excited. And then I'm like, I have another surprise for you. And he's like, what? And I'm like, we're not going to Jacksonville. And he's like, where are we going? And the thing is, my mom did a great job at prepping for like 10 days prior.
She packed his bags properly.
No, she packed his bags the day before, but the 10 days prior, she they had been watching YouTube videos on Costa Rica. Because the thing is, I've been going to Costa Rica for the past 4 years. One of our clients who became an investor, and he's a great mentor of mine, the founder of Wix.com, Gigs. So he lives in Costa Rica. So I've been going to Costa Rica for about 4 years back and forth. And I always like tell him stories about like, you know, how much I love Costa Rica and this and that. So my mom they start looking at videos, and my mom's like, man, wouldn't it be so cool to go to Costa Rica? They call me Ica. So like, wouldn't it be cool to go? Because she's like, Ica, da, da, da. And my dad's like, looking at all this stuff. So when I tell him the second surprise, I'm like, we're going to Costa Rica. And then all the kids are like, yeah, we're going to Costa Rica. Yo, he started bawling.
Wow.
And then I started bawling. And I'm just hugging him because it was like, you know, I felt like so many things had to happen to get to that point. And that was really like, and you know, what I will give credit to is like going back to the first thing, like what was the introduction to entrepreneurship? It was my father, right? And I think so I started Infinity in 2013, right? So it's 2025 now. So I want to say probably for the first like maybe 8 to 9 years, not even, I'll say it's like 10, 11 years, the first 11 years, we're really trying to prove him wrong. All right. And now like the mentality shifted to like, you know, I understand, I've always known this is my purpose. I understand this is my gift. The way I look at the body is like, you know, my friends call me, what is it, Dr. Oz? Not Dr. Oz, that show that where the kid sees like the human body, like, you know, in holograms. Like that's how I see the body. Like since I was in high school, like anything that had to do with like biology, science, anatomy, like it just came easy for me. Right. So I always knew that was my purpose. So part of the fuel was like, okay, this is like a gift from God. He gave me this gift, how to understand the body, how I do that, right? But that was only 50% of the fuel. The other was like, I want to prove my dad wrong. And now like it's really been like the big change this year has been, you know, no, this is my purpose, right? Like I'm just a steward. I'm a steward of this. Like, yeah, I'm the largest shareholder in Infinity. I still own, you know, over, you know, like 90% of the company, right? All these things, but Infinity is not mine, right? My children are not mine. My parents are not mine. Where I live is not mine. My car is not mine. These are gifts that I was given the responsibility to be the steward of. And that's kind of the narrative I did. And then I understand how my parents also, like, I'm not my parents, right? My parents are not mine. And so understanding that is like, how can I be the steward of that relationship? Right? I'm the custodian, right? And then I'm going to be judged by the way or the level of custodianship I've had for all these things I've been given. So that's like been a big change. And then really being able to do these bucket list items, right, with my father since that conversation, it's been amazing. You know, we went tuna fishing, right? We sashimi the tuna right on the boat. We caught the bull shark. We stayed at the sickest house beachfront. Like we've done all these like cool things since, you know, but it was like, you know, and Mo was right? It was like, hey, you need to talk to your father.
And the business post conversation with dad has improved significantly.
I'll say more than significantly, right? More significantly, and I think like I'm more focused, right? Like right now, like I've kind of like stayed away from like looking at the day-to-day ops. Like I was so obsessed with like day-to-day ops because I was in survival mode. And then where I've been focusing so much more is on the scaling, right? So it's funny because I was at the not the last mastermind you guys did, the one prior in August.
Yep.
And I remember one of the guys asked me, he's like, oh, so like, are you doing like a rolling cap raise? And I was like, I guess so, right? And now I can say, no, like I'm very focused, right? I'm not worried about what can go wrong, what can, you know, none of these things. Like I'm focused on like the massive level of acceleration because I'm so focused on the right purpose. Like I'm not trying to prove him wrong, right? And I'm not trying to prove myself right? I'm just fulfilling a purpose because I'm the steward of this, right? So like the opportunities, right? I mean, everything's expanded, right? Day-to-day ops, they're getting, you know, they're potentiating little by little, right? But then like the grand scheme of the final vision is like so clear. It's so clear right now, and the opportunities that I have are right now, and I say opportunities because, until we're signing on the dotted line, right?
Yep.
It is, but these are like generational changing opportunities that I don't think I was able to focus if I was trying to prove somebody wrong and prove myself right or do all these things, right? This very egotistical thing.
Dude, one thing you're just like what you're, first of all, thank you for sharing this
Yeah, for
because
sure.
everyone who's listening, I want to do, and I do this often, but I want to just like recap a few really key things that you're mentioning. And without you being vulnerable and sharing your truth, many people would miss this. What Hector is describing is something I learned also very recently, to be honest, by one of our members, Adam. And if you ever do our men's workshop, which once we launch at the end of the month, you should totally sign up for one. He runs it.
1,000%.
I've been doing it since I was 19. And I'll never forget one time I was going through a very difficult time in my hush business. And I went to him because he also helps me navigate through business. And I was laying out all the business problems and all the business solutions and certain things that could happen and what I'll do. And just as like perfect from a business perspective. And he was like, great. Why don't you go and have a conversation with your brother and your mom? And when you handle that, your business will thrive. I was like, what are you talking about? It's not what's happening right now. Sales are down in this region and this product isn't performing as well. And this is what I need to do to sell the inventory. And then I also need a line of credit. And he's like, doesn't matter. Until you can deal with the blocks in your own life, you don't create this space for everything else to go really well. Ned posted one of my videos today, and it was like, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't take care of your family and your friends and your immediate circle, you're actually not taking care of your business and all the other things you think you spend the most amount of time on. And what you just described was like, spent 11, 12 years building, achieving success, going through the best times and the worst times, only to realize that being out of connection with your father was the one thing that was really just holding you back. And now unlocking that is just created a space so big and so powerful that you can do what you're doing for the rest of your life because you now have clarity on your mission. And it's such a powerful thing because every founder I know, it's like, if you just identify, we do this thing at the masterminds, like identified one hard conversation that we're avoiding, everyone is avoiding it. Whether it's family or friends or business partners or the freaking person at the coffee shop that pisses you off every day or whatever it is, it's like, what is the one hard conversation we're avoiding? And what you just shared today is literally the result of having it.
Yeah, like 100%. 100%, and I think, part of this journey, right? And I think, a lot of us experience it, right? Like I had to experience the death of my ego, right? And it was like this 2-year death, right? It was this 2-year death, where like I lost my identity, right? Like I went through really dark times, right? Like I mean,
Without ayahuasca.
without ayahuasca, right? Like so, it was like the death of the ego, right? I mean, staring out of a balcony, 47-story high, kind of stuff, right? Like I went through all this stuff because I was like, I identified so much with what I did, right? With the outcome of what I did, right? And I've been slaying a lot of dragons, so I've been slaying a lot of dragons, and now like I'm really focused, and I understand, in that understanding that like nothing is yours, like nothing really matters, but also in Islam we call it tawakkul, right? Knowing that God already took care of it, so like you move very different, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very different, but I experienced a lot of different things, right? There's a lot of dragons I had to slay, right? So the relationship at home, right, with the wife, right, with the kids, right, my ex, right, my ex business partners, right, the people that work for me, the people I've done so much for, like all these other things, right? Like I had to like tackle one by one by one by one by one by one, right? And then, my father was one of them, right? And it was like one of the final ones.
The final boss.
He was like the final boss, right?
Yeah.
But then two, and I don't think you ever slay the dragons, right? I think what happens is you chain them up, right? So you have to go back and maintain those chains, right? And I think, in focusing And one of those chains, like one of the dragons I have to maintain is like kind of like the home situation, right? Like it's like making sure that, because at the end of the day, like, and this is for like businessmen, entrepreneurs, men in general, right? Like family men, right? It's not just about like financially providing for like the home, right? Or the kids or the wife, right? Like security doesn't come from like financial resources, right? The thing that was happening with me at home was I was throwing money at a problem that money's not a solution for, right? So these are things that I've been learning. I've been learning a lot of these things, right? And it's been a 2-year journey for me, right? So imagine in 2023, right? I remember I went to an Alex Hormozy thing in 2023, and they were like, I remember like we're in the VIP section, I'm in the front, and then he asked everybody, "Oh, are there any businesses that do this? Raise your hand." And blah 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 blah. Next thing you know, I'm like the last guy standing, like with my hand up, And I'm like, oh, and then like my ego was so big because I was like, guys, you don't see this. Like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Right. And I remember a month later, like that's when everything just went like
Wow.
plummeted, right? So I had to learn, right? I had to learn what it was like downsizing the business, right? Going from all these employees to like, going down. I can't delegate anymore. I have to wear all these hats, right? Oh wait, how am I gonna cover like the resources for the house? Like all these other things, right? Like I had to learn a lot, right?
So
And
powerful.
for me, it was probably, and it still is, right? The hardest training I've ever done, right? It's the hardest, right? But what makes it better is knowing that everything that happens, right? Number one is temporary, right? Nothing lasts forever. The good, the bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And two, that everything's already taken care of, right? We're all gonna die,
Yeah,
right?
guaranteed.
Guaranteed, we're all gonna die, right? We all have whatever vision you have, and I have, and I'm gonna revert back to Islam, right? Like whatever vision you have, whatever, like it's already set in stone, like God's already done it, right? It's there, right? So it's our choice, right? And this is my thesis on this, is our choice to pick how we get to that final vision. Right? You have a vision, you Aaron, you have a vision, you have it, you know where you're gonna go. You get to choose how you get there. Are you gonna walk? Are you gonna run? Are you gonna drive a bike? Are you gonna fly in a G5? Are you gonna drive in a Cullinan? You get to choose, right? And then our daily actions, right? And our surrendering to the outcome is what gives us the vehicle that we're gonna get in there, right? So for me, a lot of the choices that I was making, i.e., trying to prove my dad wrong, spending 15K at the club, right? Doing all these things, right? Got me out of driving a car and walking.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to get there, right?
It's unwavering belief in the outcome.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned is so important. And it's funny because we had someone comment on one of our ads for Founders Club that said like our mind body business. And they're like, this is so stupid. I would just want business for my mind and my body. I can go elsewhere. And for a second, I was like, honestly, probably right. Like you should go to infinity for your body. You should go to these places. But what I reminded myself and reminded the team is what you just kind of expanded on, which is as an entrepreneur, as a founder, your mind and your body and your business, it's actually just one, it just equals you. And if your body is falling apart, and I definitely want to get into this because I love your perspective on how entrepreneurs are modern day athletes. And unfortunately, your career lasts until you die if you're in the game. And because of that, if your body's not right, if your mind's not right, then the likelihood that your business is going to be doing amazing, possible, but very low. And in our opinion, the modern day entrepreneur is not just someone that has a business that's doing amazing well and has horrible health, terrible relationships at home, no connection to any sort of outside spiritualism, religion, whatever it is. Their whole community hates them, but their business is doing well. I think the modern day entrepreneur, we all would all look at that person and be like, I don't think that person is successful. Like I wouldn't trade my family, my health, and my community for more money. They all are together. It's all one. And I think that's what's so unique about the modern day entrepreneur, like you were saying, like I can't just have my business. I want to fix my relationships at home. I want to go deeper in connection with my kids and my family and my body, so that I know those all add up to also having at least a better chance of being super successful at business. And I want to jump into infinity.
Yeah.
Because, I was an athlete for 20 years, and I find it hilarious that 15 years ago, they would literally give us a Snickers bar in between periods. Like if we went into overtime, they were like, oh, Snicker bars. Where like, I guess there's some component of that makes sense, like a little spike, but just so much stupidity was thrown onto us. Like heavy squats the morning of a game to activate the glutes. The stupidest thing I've ever heard. Guys would get injured, what you do post injury. And in the last, I would say 6 years of my my entrepreneurial journey, I've started to realize how important it is for me to feel good every day. And you once told me that entrepreneurs make way more important and more total decisions than a quarterback. And yet most entrepreneurs are nowhere near to treating themselves, their mind and their body, to the level of a quarterback. And it's detrimental to their success as a human being.
1000%.
So tell me the mission behind Infinity and what you see, because there's so many founders that listen to this. Many of them are members, which you know and you meet, but also many who are inspiring founders or want to take their business to the next level. When it comes to the body, what is one thing you believe that entrepreneurs are just totally missing?
Great question, by the way, because I was asked the same question when I was in Ibiza. Shout out to Like Mike DJ. Yeah. He asked me this exact same question, and I said, know thyself, right? Because if you don't know yourself, you don't understand yourself, you don't understand your physiology, you don't understand what makes you tick biochemically, physiologically, neurologically, right? Then how do you know that the stuff that you're consuming is actually good for you? And we'll start there, because everybody in this space of like, I don't like the word biohacking and I don't like the word longevity, right? You're trying to, biohacking is throwing perfume at a bucket full of shit. Okay. Right. And then longevity, right? And I'll say this, right? And most of longevity really is pharmaceuticals hidden, in a green pill. Not a red pill, it's a green pill. Right? If you really take a look back and look at the industry and where we're at right now, right? What's really happening, right? It's like a transformation of pharmaceuticals, right? Like we're going into biologics, right? Let's start with biologics, compounded supplementation, and then over-the-counter supplementation. So what you're doing is you have a bucket full of shit and you're just throwing a whole bunch of stuff in it. Why don't we throw out the shit, clean out the bucket, and then we can see what we're gonna put in the bucket, right? So it's really know thyself, right? I think that's like the start, right? But then once you know yourself, right, it's the speed of execution, right? And then where you're and what you're going to execute, right? And that's what I've dedicated my entire career in really understanding this, right? Because in 2013, when I started Infinity, I was very perplexed and very confused, right? And my confusion came from not understanding why these pro athletes, right, that have at that time what I considered was illicit number of resources, right? Why these guys were still getting injured. And then in the same space, right, as I was working with these ultra high net worth individuals, why are they still getting sick? If you have all these resources, what's happening here? Nobody really fully understands their own body, right? Every body is unique, and that's where like our protocol and our approach is N equals 1. Like you are the case study, and the only benchmark we're doing is against your own biology, right? And I think that's where you have to be headed, right? Especially as an entrepreneur, right? You are making more important decisions, right? And decisions that you're doing are impacting people at a greater scale, right? And not only that, right? But one thing I tell all of our athletes, clients, and I tell my friends is you are the superstar in your own movie. There's nobody more important than you, right? In your own movie, respectively, right? And you have to be selfish about that, because if you're not well, mentally, physically, emotionally, right? What's going to happen to everybody's depending on you, right? So I'm going to go back to know thyself, right? Know what dragons you have to slay, right? Know the foods that cause chronic inflammation and autoimmune responses in your body, right? Know exactly the levels of cardiovascular intensity they're going to metabolize energy at different forms and fashions, right? Know exactly how much you need to eat. Know the things that are disrupting your biochemistry. Like all these different things, right? Is know thyself, right? When you know thyself, then you can move fast, right? You can heal fast. You can be more productive. You can have more energy, right? And my thesis is I'm not trying to make you live longer, right? Look, my mother-in-law was in Ibiza at a day party at 81 years old, dancing in front of the DJ booth. Like, if that's not longevity, I don't know what is,
Yeah.
right? So it's really
You
about
want better years.
yeah, you want better years. So, and this is, I've been saying this to a lot of our investors, and I was like, imagine if Leonardo da Vinci, the last 10 years of his life, was spent being productive and not bedridden and sick. Right? And the joke I say is we would have been left with the Da Vinci answers, not the Da Vinci codes. All right. So that's really what I'm really focused on. That's like my mission and my purpose, right? How can I create more energy, vitality, and productivity until you die, right? Like your last breath is spent with maximum energy, right? Whether you live to 80, whether you live to 100, whether you live to 105, whether you live to 75. Yeah. So how are you spending your life?
To get the most out of it. So the first thing that just came into my head is that a friend of mine, his grandfather just passed away, I think at 89. And he was sharing with me, he's like, what's so interesting about the way he died is he died in like 7 days. But up until those 7 days where he was like, got sick, went to the hospital and then passed, he was like running. He ran a marathon this year.
Wow.
He died this year and ran a marathon at 89. Okay?
Wow.
Yes. In his hometown. So it was like the oldest person to complete a marathon in his hometown. He was playing pickleball. He was a big pickleball guy, literally until that 1 week. And he looked at me and I was thinking, wow, that's really sad. And he was like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that he didn't spend 40 years losing his mind, his body, from one hospital to the next hospital, miserable. Is like he had the best last year. He lived fully. Yeah. And I think like when people think of longevity or biohacking, these terms that you said, like, we don't even speak about, I agree, because it's not necessarily about living longer because it's kind of out of your control. Shit happens.
Yeah.
But it's about the years that you are living, just waking up with energy, being able to play sport. Like one of my goals now, and I think you share this with me, because I'm a client and I'm new into it and I'm already loving it, is investing now so that when you're 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, you don't pay the price then.
100%.
And it's very much like the market. It's like we all know the stark difference in your returns when you invest at 25 versus 35, when you invest at 35 versus 45. And I think the same is to be true about community and friends. When you invest in your relationships now, they pay off later.
Yeah.
And when you invest in your health now. And for a lot of younger entrepreneurs, because many might be listening to this, and for me, younger is like, at this point, sub 50, younger entrepreneur who thinks, I'll take care of my health later. I gotta do my business now, dude. I gotta make money now, and then I'll invest into this. First, I gotta make money. What would you say to them?
I say that is the fast lane to having a shitty life. Look, I've worked with, some of the biggest businessmen, right, you can think of. And this comes to mind. We had a client early in my career, multi-billion-dollar tech company out of the DC area. And he was on his third heart. He was 56 years old.
Jesus.
If he wasn't a billionaire, he wouldn't have gotten that third heart. Guaranteed, for sure.
Yeah.
Right? We would go visit him. So, I go spend like 2 weeks. My at that time, my business partner would go and spend 3 weeks. We go like back and forth, rotate. And after, we left the last trip, we leave. Like we're following up. We're keeping up with his team. My business partner went to the hospital in the DMV area. I forgot the hospital to go train all the like pulmonary technicians and how we want them to do things, right? All this stuff. After that, then he stayed there. I remember he wanted us to open up a location in the DMV area. And I was like, I was really young, right? I remember he's like, you have a blank check. And I was like, I don't know, you know? Like it's the first time I ever, and that was a legitimate blank check, right? But, you know, I was young and naive and I didn't think it was real. Anyways, long story short, he ends up passing. $1 billion tech company. He ends up passing because he focused so much on the business and building the business, right? And I think you can do both, right? You can build a business, have a family, have a life, take care of yourself. But because for him, the idea was, I need to do this only. So he had estranged children, right? His wife was kind of in and out, right? So he passes. None of his 3 kids want to do anything with the business.
Wow.
His wife can't run it, right? His wife, they hire a CEO. CEO tanks a company, legacy gone. $1 billion tech company. 56 years old. So like, this is like, you have to invest in yourself. So like, how about this? How about instead of going to Louis Vuitton and buying yourself a cool book bag, how about you come to Infinity? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's so true.
And I see it too in athletics too. In athletics, look, are we the least expensive place ever? Absolutely not. Right? Absolutely not. Are we the best place? Probably yes. Right? And I've seen it with some of the athletes, right? They'll go and be like, damn, like I'm really gonna have to spend this much. I'm like, it is what it is, like, right? And they won't do it. They would go.
So interesting.
They would go and spend 20 grand at Louis V. I know because
you see it on Instagram.
Yeah, you'll see it on IG
like,
right away.
Bro, you just said you don't have money,
right? But then they end up on injured reserve, and then they're not playing for 2-3 years,
and that's way more costly,
right?
Yeah.
So like in athletics, you see like the financial impact right away, right?
Wow.
Right. In entrepreneurship, it's a slow death.
Yes.
Right. And I've seen it. I've seen it. What is it worth? Like, because at the end of the day, like I said, like you don't own anything. Once you die, it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And look at this, like the legacy that this person built, right, was for nothing. You know, so like it's like you have to invest, and like, and our leading investor, who's like my big brother, Mo, he says this, right? Your 40s are the last decade you have to invest in your future.
Then it flips.
And it flips.
And you reap the rewards.
Right. And it's for your health. It's for your health. So like, and you look at it and I see it. I see it, and it's so much like I get before. When I was younger, I was like, especially after that event, when this guy, I'm like, oh my God, he lost $1 billion fortune because he wasn't healthy enough. Like I was like, really, like, oh my God, you got to do this, you got to do that. Now I'm just like, I just sit back and I'm like,
so what he would have paid probably for an extra 25 years probably would have been the total amount of money he had if I would have paid every dollar.
Well, if you think about it, I saw this reel the other day on Instagram that they asked the guys like, oh, like if I gave you $1 billion, would you take it? And they're like, yeah. He's like, okay, but what if I give you the $1 billion and you die tomorrow? Would you still take it? He goes, no. So the guy's like, okay, your life's worth more than $1 billion.
It's just that perspective that's so key. We got to do, Ned, a part 2 with Hector for sure. We got to do a part 2. The last question I have, if there's one message you can give to your younger self. So let's say we were able to bring a younger Hector here, sitting right at the edge of the table here. What is the one message you would share with your younger self if you can go back and just share one thing?
Ask for help.
Hector, you're a G, dude. Thank you so much for coming, spending the time. Thank you for being an amazing member. Thank you for taking care of me and Chris and so many amazing people. Thank you for showing up.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was super dope.
Of course, dude.
Yeah.
And thank you for being vulnerable. I think everyone that's going to listen to this is going to benefit. And I'm so happy we did this. We got to do this again.
Yeah,
This
let's
was
do it.
unfucking believable.
Yeah,
Let's
next
go.
time we can go into the science stuff. Right?
I want to do like a whole session on, if you're listening to this, yeah, like let us know, because I think I would even entertain an episode. I know we're kind of rambling at the end here. I would entertain an episode where we bring like 6 members. We do like a table and we do the whole thing about health with you. That would be freaking cool, no?
Yeah, that'd be super
That'd be
dope.
fucking dope. We bring Dragon, like we bring like a couple thoughts.
Yeah.
And we just really open mic as an entrepreneur, like what are we doing about our health and showing up every day fully? Because it's in a sales organization, the only thing that sales managers really do in a sales organization behind scripting and all that shit is just getting their team to show up with energy. That's 90% of the transaction. And you can't fight that battle when people are not understanding that N equals 1. And it's like, what is going on for me to make sure that I show up fully? And if I show up fully and you show up fully, then we can show up fully.
Yeah, it's not like it's, my talks with, real quick, just like, my biggest focus for the past 10 months is like expanding and scaling into the Saudi market, right? And like the narrative that we've been having with like our investors, right? The big giga projects, and alhamdulillah, like everything's moving forward really nicely, is creating vitality as an asset, right?
A line item.
Right. So vitality is an asset, right? Because if our society is more productive, has more energy, what does that do now to the GDP? What does that do to all these different things, right? So that's vitality as an asset. That's the purpose now. That's where we're moving forward. Yeah.
Let's go. Life is energy. Year 1.
There you go.
Thank you. Boom. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Founder to Founder podcast. And I have one favor, just one favor to ask. It's the only favor I'll ever ask from you. And if you liked what you listened to please like, subscribe, and please just leave a comment. Let us know what you think, how we can make it better. We are all in on delivering value to you. And all we ask in return is that you hit that subscribe. It goes a long way for what we're trying to build here. And as always, we post an episode every single Wednesday. So stay tuned and thank you for tuning in.